I'm Daphne Horowitz, and welcome to Leadership Live podcast. The greatest skill of leadership is growing yourself and growing future leaders around you. You can do that by developing practical leadership habits that take you from top performer to extraordinary leader, a leader that inspires people and gets results. Whether you're a first-time manager, entrepreneur, or seasoned executive, this podcast is about having the conversations that cut through the noise and focus on what matters most in your business and leadership. So, are you ready to master your mindset, inspire your team, and elevate your business? When you take on a new project and it's been running for a while, it's always good to press pause at various points along the way and do a little bit of reflection to see what worked, what didn't, to celebrate the wins and make adjustments along the way to see how things could be even better. And this is what I'm doing in today's episode of Leadership Live. We've been running now for 6 months. This is episode 25 with an episode dropping every single week. We are now concluding season 1, and I'm really proud of that. So I'd like to start by inviting you to join us and continue the conversation in our Facebook group. It's called Leadership Live with Daphne Horowitz. So if you're on Facebook, go on over there, join the group, and let's continue the conversations. We continue to have great questions asked and answered, and every episode when it drops is on there. So head on over there and join our group. If you're not on Facebook, feel free to connect with me on other social media platforms. I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram. Direct message me and continue the conversation, because I always say that conversation is the tool of leadership, and I'd like you to be part of it. I'd like to know who you are and get to know you even better. So I started this podcast in the midst of the pandemic because I really wanted to give voice to some of the things that I know can help leaders navigate this complex, chaotic, and confusing time. I know key things about leadership, and I want to share them with you here today. And then I'm going to move into a little bit of a reflection in terms of what I've learned and what I've experienced through doing this podcast. And as we tie up, before we take a break and head on to season 2 of Leadership Live podcast, where we have even more exciting guests, interviews, coaching sessions, and some more solo shows with me as well. The key things I know about leadership are, first of all, that leadership is a verb. It's about what you do and how you show up. It's not some vague concept or theoretical model. I really believe that it is about what you do as a leader. And you can learn how to be a great leader by being more of yourself. And this is exactly what we need in the time that we're living in at the moment. The second thing I know is that leadership is a habit. We can learn the skills and apply them consistently until being a leader is as natural as brushing your teeth. Yes, sometimes it's challenging. A lot of the times it's challenging. But when you develop a leadership mindset, you take action and make decisions with confidence. And that's what being a leader is all about. It's not about always getting it right. It's about practicing that leadership approach, leadership style, leadership way of thinking. And I call that the leadership mindset. And the third thing I know about leadership is that leadership is for everyone. You don't need to wait for someone to give you the authority or to ask you to step up. Have a look at the environment that you're in and ask yourself, how can I show up as a leader here? And we have many different contexts in which we can be a leader. Doesn't always have to be at work, but work is one of them. Family, community, wherever you're at, you can always show up and be more of yourself and become that leader that you want to be and the leader that you look up to. So all in all, I want to say that it's important to be all in everything that you do. In your career, in your business, in your life. Look at how you're doing it. Take a step back and think about what's going really well, what could be different, what could be better, and how do you want to keep growing and developing yourself and your leadership so that you can always just take the absolute best of what life has to offer. I will say that it always begins with your mindset and behaviors, taking a look at yourself, Then looking at how you are with the people around you. What are your relationships saying to you about your leadership style and approach? And then look at the vision that you have for yourself, the direction in which you're going. Are you seeing the results that you want to see? Are you heading in the direction that you want to be heading in? If not, make some changes. And if yes, celebrate those. It's fantastic. So some of my reflections relating to creating this podcast is what I'd like to share with you right now. And I hope that it is helpful for you as you reflect on your own journey over the past year. So for me, I started it this podcast at a time when I wanted to talk about what was going on. I wanted to reach people, even people that I don't know, in a way that is going to be helpful for you to lead yourselves, your families, your business, your career in this really challenging time. I wanted to cut through the noise. There is so much noise out there. And for me, a big question is, how do we cut through the noise and focus on what's important for you at this time? Where do you want to get to? And how do you make sure that you maintain the momentum and look after yourself at the same time and get the results? Keep moving forward, keep progressing towards where you want to be. So I had to get over my own blocks about what it would be like to create a podcast. A big question for me was, do I have enough to say? Do I have anything to say? And it turns out that I do. I also wanted to have fun with it. I wanted it to be as little of a burden to myself as possible. So I handed over to my team to handle all the background stuff. And it's a great opportunity to actually thank them here. So thank you, Annie, for the design, the show notes, and coordinating everything podcast. Andy, the amazing sound engineer who really has had to deal with some sound challenges that I've presented to him, but he always does it with great finesse and talent. And then Liska, of course, my project and office manager, who just takes away everything that I don't love to do and really allows me the space, the energy, and the time to do my thing. Another thing I want to reflect on is that done is better than perfect. And that's a big lesson that I learned here. There are definitely things that I missed. There are definitely things that I wanted to say. I always made notes of what I want to say in an episode, and then I go on my own tangent and forget some of those things. I made mistakes with equipment, with sound, with whatever it is. And, it's all part of the learning. The fact is that I got it out there. And for me, I'm quite proud of that. So done is better than perfect. And to get something out, to put it out into the world, to have it your own, with your own message and your own flavor is really great. And everything that you do along the way is part of the learning experience. So that's also part of the joy. I have really loved bringing on guests and meeting new people. So this took place a little bit later on in my podcast, and I am really enjoying this part of it, and there's going to be more to come. So in future episodes, for sure, we'll have more interviews, we'll have more coaching sessions, and I particularly enjoy speaking to people who have a big mission in the world. So that to me is fun and interesting, and I want to hear about it. So anyone who wants to come on my show and share some of your missions, please do just, reach out and let's get you on the podcast for next season. Another aspect, which was really for me quite courageous and bold, was about opening up my coaching space or my coaching office for the world to see. I believe that everyone can learn from listening to a coaching session. Firstly, we know that we go through similar things. So when we hear someone in a coaching session who has a similar experience to us, it's really validating. And we also learn from it because we learn as others reflect on their own experiences. We hear how they think about it. We hear how they answer certain questions. We actually can benefit at the same time, even though our experience is a bit different. And of course, we're different people. By hearing someone else's coaching session, we can also often get a bit of coaching ourselves. If we look at it in the way of, how would we answer that question? What does this make me think about? So really wearing that coaching hat has a lot of value. And of course, it's opening some of that space of what is coaching really like? What do other people go through in a coaching session? So for me, that was a bold step and something that I'm going to continue to do. And I've got some great coaching sessions lined up for season 2, so we can look forward to more of those. And then it's really about thinking about something that you want and then just going ahead and doing it. Not overthinking the logistics, not overthinking everything, just do it. I wanted to have a podcast and I didn't do it for a very long time. But when the pandemic began and I was moved by my desire to offer support, knowledge and tips, I just did it. I just went ahead and did it. And sometimes, as I said, not perfect, but just taking that first step actually allows you to start gaining momentum and getting it all done. So I'm really proud of what I've created here, and I've covered, I think, a range of topics relating to leadership in crisis. So feel free to go back and pick out some of the topics that could help you today and see if there's anything that you've missed or something that you want to learn, and listen to the episodes and enjoy. A few that I wanted to pick out in terms of the favorites were the self-care episode, which was in episode 1. Effective communication, episode 2, was really valuable. Maintaining a sense of purpose in times of crisis, in episode 4. Staying motivated was one of the top listened to podcast episodes. So staying motivated in tough times, it was episode 6. Then another firm favorite was the exploration of rebel versus stickler. How do you tend to handle crises? Are you more of a rebel, or do you like to follow the rules and be guided in how you navigate that? That was episode 13. And then another one was the feedback conversations, how to have powerful and effective feedback conversations, both in terms of giving and receiving feedback. That was episode 22. And then the last episode, episode 24, was all about happiness. And that was also really a fascinating conversation that we had there with David Meltzer. So on this note, I'd like to say that I'm really grateful for your support. You are the person who's listening and sharing your time with me. And that's what makes me motivated and inspired to continue. It's a privilege for me that you choose to spend your time with me in this way once a week, listening to what I'm thinking and what I have to share with you. And that really moves me. It's an honor that I don't take lightly. So please do continue to be part of my community. And as I said, I invite you to continue the conversation with me, as I said, on my Facebook group, or DM me on Instagram and LinkedIn or wherever it is. And I would really like to invite you to take a moment now to reflect on what you've done and achieved over the past year. It's been a tough year. It's been a year where leadership is needed more than ever. And I think we are all still learning a lot about how to navigate this time. So how has this experience been for you? And even more important, I'd really love to know, what are you celebrating? What are you celebrating from the last year, as tough as it may have been? And to celebrate this podcast, we have some special highlights of the last 24 episodes of this show that we've put together. So sit back, enjoy hearing some of the snippets, reflect on what's coming up, and see what comes up for you as you listen to some of these. And if something is particularly moving or meaningful to you, make a note of it and see how you want to think about it and share it with me. Again, let's continue the conversation. And of course, do remember that my newly launched book is available for sale on Amazon. Go ahead and make a purchase of your own copy, or get a free sample on my website at daphnahorovitz.com. But I'd love to continue to be a part of your life. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being part of this podcast. And I just look forward to season 2. And for now, enjoy the highlight reel of the last 24 episodes that we've spent together. If we start to think about our business and we start wearing that hat of the CEO, we can actually realize that balance of doing the things that we love, focusing on the things that brought us to this place, and also how do we manage that aspect of being a CEO, which is a key part of running the business, running a team, working your division, or whatever it is. And I think a great analogy for this that I often use, and this is really part of, if I had to summarize what thinking like a CEO really means, it really comes down to this. If we think of an analogy of a dance floor, so think about the fact you go to a party or you go to a dance club or whatever it is, and you're standing on the dance floor and dancing with your partner, and you're having a great time, enjoying the music, letting the energy of all the dancers really flow into you and really feeling like you're part of the experience. And when you're on the dance floor, you feel it. You feel the beat of the music. You feel the rhythm with your partner or the other people dancing around you. You really feel like you're part of something, and you're really absorbed in the experience of it. And then sometimes when we're on the dance floor, in that experience, there are things that we're not aware of. We're not aware of people outside the circle, maybe chatting to each other or having a drink or having something to eat. We're not aware of how many people are on the dance floor because we're in the thick of it. We're not aware of if people are dancing in certain formations on the edges of the dance floor. We don't see the whole picture because we only have the view of where we are at on that dance floor. And then there's the analogy of going onto the balcony. Imagine that at this party, you can walk up the stairs, go onto the balcony and watch the dancing from above. And when you go onto the balcony, you see a completely different view. You actually start to notice all those things that I spoke about, people on the periphery, people chatting. What do the formations of the different clusterings of people dancing on the dance floor look like? And what does that create? So that's a very different view and perspective that you get than when you're in the dance floor. And I think as a CEO, you really want to be able to understand and know what the right balance is in terms of when do you sit on or dance on the dance floor, when do you become part of the dancing and you're on the dance floor taking part in the experience that's happening in that moment, and when do you need to step back, go up the stairs and watch the dancing from the balcony. We actually have been going through the change curve in a very real way. And it's been taking some time. And I think everybody is in a different place on this change curve as well. So for those of you who know the change curve, you'll know what I'm talking about. For those of you who don't, it's the different stages that we go through when we experience crisis or change. And the first stage is the stage of denial, which I can say I was totally in it in the beginning. When we heard about this virus and it was coming up, I was going, oh no, it's another flu virus. It's going to go. Don't worry. Let's carry on. Business as usual. Then you go into the mode of resistance. This can't be happening to me. Why is it happening? How can I change it? I don't want this to happen. And a lot of us have experienced this on some level. So part of it is carrying on as normal. Part of it is realizing you can't carry on as normal. So how do we fight it? Let's fight the regulations. Let's fight the restrictions. Part of it is saying, well, let's just put our heads down and do what we need to do. But we don't really want to accept that this is our life. Whatever form resistance takes, it's part of the development of our dealing with change. The third stage is exploration. So now once you've been through denial and resistance, you start to understand, okay, hold on a sec, this thing is here to stay. How do I understand it better? What do I need to know? How do I find out more information? And I think sometimes that element of looking for every new piece of information, how many people, how many cases have been identified, how many cases are seriously ill, how many people have died, all of those, following the stats and really wanting to know every single thing. And do we build antibodies or do we not build antibodies? And all those very specific questions that people really want to know and are questioning all the time. We want information. We want to start the exploration phase so that we can understand it, because when we understand it, then we'll know how to deal with it. And then we move into the fourth phase, which is the phase of acceptance and commitment. Once we've dealt with the struggle, the denial and resistance, we've gone through the exploration of really trying to understand and gather as much information as we can, we then move into that stage of, okay, I accept that it's here. I understand we're dealing with something that is going to be here for a while. What do I do with it? And committing to moving forward and seeing what we can do. Some of us may still be in the denial phase. Who knows? Some of us may have moved into acceptance way more quickly than others. Everybody at their own pace, and that's okay. But sometimes recognizing where you are on this change curve also helps you to understand your level of responses, your emotions, your level of stress, and your behaviors and actions. Having clear communication. Okay, so this is an area that I find is quite challenging for leaders. So sometimes as a leader, you may have a big vision, a big goal that you want to implement. You might be a fast thinker. You might have all the elements very clear in your mind. And yet when you communicate it to others, you make assumptions about what is understood and what is not understood, what is clear and what is not clear. And the picture might be so clear in your mind, and you don't realize that actually there is not that much clarity for the people who you're leading. And they need more information. They need you to break it down into steps. And that is sometimes an area of challenge for leaders. So I think leaders really, really need to work on developing clear communication, being clear on your message, speaking directly and being specific. So sometimes we also speak in large concepts and big notions, but we find it hard to break it down into steps so that the people who actually have to go and implement can understand what we want from them. And another area there, which is very closely connected, is the whole topic of feedback. And I really want to do another podcast episode on giving and receiving feedback, because I think it's a huge topic particularly in business and organizations. I think also in personal relationships, and it's an area that requires a lot of skill and attention. So when we're looking at feedback, I think we need to be able to deliver both the positive messages and the tough messages with kindness. And what I do see, and this is a huge element of leadership, is there are many leaders who will avoid the tough messages because it's hard. It doesn't matter what position you are in your business or organization. It's never easy to give across a tough message. And we'd rather avoid it until we absolutely have to do it. And that is part of getting your communication as a skill, getting it right, and being able to deliver those tough messages with kindness as well.
I think the common myth is that money buys happiness and love. But the other common myth is that money doesn't buy happiness or love. So the truth that I've learned is that money is very important. My motto is make a lot of money to help a lot of people and have a lot of fun. That's my motto. And you can't give what you don't receive. I think more people have a problem receiving and listening than they do giving and speaking. And so for me, what I like to do is to shift the paradigm and tell people money doesn't buy love or happiness, but it allows you to shop. And what you should focus in on is shopping for the right thing. So for me, building community centers in Africa, Chief Chancellor Junior Achievement University, empowering young entrepreneurs around the world. If you shop for the right thing, money will buy you happiness. It'll buy you.
I love that. Hold on. Let's pause there for a moment. I love that. That is so powerful. If you shop for the right thing, money will buy you happiness. That's powerful. That's powerful. Wow. What? Yeah. What did you say? Was that your own?
He said that's the lesson, right? Exactly.
That's the lesson. That is, I haven't heard that before. That's profound, David. That's profound.
Cost me over $100 million to learn that lesson. So I went bankrupt.
$100 million. $100 million of shopping for the wrong thing.
The wrong thing. Exactly. Exactly.
This wraps up another episode of Leadership Live. Thank you for joining us today. And now let's continue the conversation. Connect with me on social media, LinkedIn, or head on to my website at daphnahorovitz.com, where you can download a free sample of my new book, Weekly Habits for Extraordinary Leaders. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love to hear your thoughts. And be sure to share it with a friend or on social so that I can continue to reach and support leaders just like you. Tune in next week to Leadership Live, where talented people become extraordinary leaders.